Hello, and welcome to Stephoodle. I am, classically, Steph. And it's that time of year again, folks. MerMay is upon us, as foretold by the Oracle. The Oracle being the calendar app on my phone. And much like the last couple of years, I've teamed up with several of my doll friends here on YouTube to bring you a whole school of aquatically inclined dolls. Now, originally I had much grander plans in mind, with loads of sculpting, but unfortunately, my brain and body said no, so I had to scale back a bit. I decided to make a water nymph, very, very loosely inspired by ancient Greek mythology and literature. Now let's get to the doll. I figured this was the perfect time to customize my Monster High G3 Lagoona. I think she's super cute as is, but I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with her. Before I started my prep, I gave her hair a quick boil wash as I want to save it for another custom in the future. I heat up the head with a hairdryer to soften the vinyl and hopefully make it easier to remove. I still had to use my tiny scissors to help nudge the vinyl off of the neck peg though. Then I sectioned off the hair by color and chopped it all off to be tucked away for future use. Then I used a flathead screwdriver to scrape away the rest of the plugs from the inside of the head and removed them with tweezers. I removed the factory face with acetone. Since I'll be rerooting this doll and I really want to avoid the scalp splitting this time, I popped the head into a mug of hot water. This will help the holes in the vinyl contract a bit. I let it sit for about 10 minutes or so while I did other things around the house. Once the head is out and dry, I mix up some mid-blue acrylic paint and paint her scalp. Once that's dry, I give it a coat of matte Mod Podge. And I barely had any paint flake off during the reroot this time, so yay! I'll be rooting her with these 4 colors of nylon, which I originally got for another similar project a few years ago, but never finished. I'll also be adding some strands of this green frond fiber so it looks like she has seaweed in her hair. To reroot, I separate a few strands of hair from the hank, wrap it around my finger, and scoop it up with my reroot tool. Then plunge it into the head. I'll repeat this many, many times all around the head and working through all the colors. And here she is with a full head of hair. I squeeze some all-purpose glue in through the neck hole and mush it around with a cotton bud, trying to make sure all the plugs are covered. While we wait for the glue to dry, let's work on our clothes. I'm starting with a strapless bathing suit made out of this holographic scale print fabric. First, I sew up the side seams. Then I can hem the top and the leg openings with iridescent thread. Now to close up the back. And finally, I'll sew the crotch seam and flip it right side out. And here it is all done. I'm using Claudine as a model since she has the same proportions as Lagoona. Next I want to make something sort of like a chitin out of some white power mesh. I take a rectangle and wrap it around the doll like so. I'll add each side of a snap closure to these 2 corners to hold it in place. I did end up recutting the rectangle a bit narrower so it would be a bit more snug in the end, so it'll fit a little bit better later on. But you get the idea. I wanted to add a piece of knitting and cotton thread, and I knew it had to be this stitch pattern. It's called horseshoe lace, but it always looked like mermaid tails to me, so I thought it was perfect. My first attempt wanted to curl in on itself a bit too much, so I decided to start over and added an additional stitch either side of the stitch pattern for stability. I also held the cotton double with some iridescent thread to give it a bit of sparkle, and I really like how it came out. To help flatten it out, I pressed it on low heat in between parchment paper just in case the iridescent thread decided to melt. It did not, thank goodness. Now I just need to weave in the ends and figure out how to attach it to the doll. I ended up disguising the top edge with iridescent sequins and beads and added a ribbon through either side, then added some jump rings and a lobster clasp to close it. I really wasn't sure what I'd do for shoes until I remembered I had these rainbow high sandals in my stash. I carefully carved off the letters to give myself a flat surface. I harvested a few small shells from this seashell trim and glued 3 to each shoe. And there we are. On to the face. I masked off her hair and gave the head a couple of coats of Mr. Super Clear UV Cut Flat, waiting 30 minutes in between each layer. I always forget to mention it, but you can find a non-exhaustive list of materials I use in the video description, so if you're ever wondering what I'm using, usually you can find it down there. I'm gonna be real with you folks. My brain has still been kinda soupy, though I think I'm finally coming out of it a bit now. I've been having a load of executive dysfunction, which means that I found it nigh impossible to make any decisions. I had all the ideas and no ideas for this face up, so I just kind of went where it took me and tried to stay within my color palette. One thing I did for sure know I wanted to do, since Lagoona has all that forehead real estate, was to make that area look like light on the surface of water. I'd seen a few techniques that looked really cool in a lot of different colors, so I thought I'd give it a try. There was a whole hell of a lot of trust the process going on here, and it looked real bad for a while, but I think I pulled it off in the end. I think adding the bubbles and the pastel shading on top helped quite a bit. At first, I was going to make her irises look like moons, but the more I looked at her, the more I wanted her to have pupils, and I think in this instance I made the right call. I still felt like something was missing, so I brought the green in for her eyeshadow and gave her freckles like water bubbles. I gave her some lower lashes and some shimmery highlighter. And with a final dusting of sparkle, her face up is done. I forgot to hit record, but I lightly blushed her body and added some bubbles to her legs to mask where some of the pink paint had started to chip off. That's been a problem with a lot of G3 Lagoonas I've heard. Later on, some of my sealant flaked off of her legs. I was at the end of the can and didn't realize, but I was able to patch her up and camouflage the affected area by adding some extra bubbles and a boatload of shimmery mica powder, so you'll see that later on. Now I can reattach her head. I take a couple of the large shells from the same seashell shrimp from before and glue a pin to the back of each to make a couple of hair decorations. Off camera, I trimmed her hair and gave her a braid. And here's what she looks like with the shells in. I added some ribbon to her legs to bring in more of that green, and before I took photos I ended up adding some to her arms as well, as suggested by Rachel, aka Blurred Colors Art, in our group chat, which was a fantastic idea, thank you Rachel. So we have our doll, and her outfit and shoes, and all that's left is to finish getting her dressed, and she's done. I decided to name her Calypso after the nymph from the Odyssey, though I like to imagine that my Calypso is a bit less likely to hold a man captive on an island for 7 years against his will. I don't know. While I was creating her, I honestly felt like I was making a hot mess because my brain was so jumbled with ideas and I just had the worst time making creative decisions. But in the end, I think she did end up turning out pretty cohesive in spite of myself, and I'm really happy about that. What do you think of Calypso? Did you get obsessed with ancient Greek mythology for a while as a kid when you learned about it in school like me? I remember drawing a picture of the goddess Iris when I was about 12 years old because I loved that she was the personification of a rainbow. Do you have any favorite Greek myths or any favorite bit of folklore from anywhere in the world, really? I love it all. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read about them. And please do make sure to go and check out all of the amazing dolls from my collaborators. Fairyman Dolls, Electric Bunny, I Could Do That DIY, Lady Dynamite Creates, His Name is Akin, Dolly Pop, and Blurred Colors Art. Everyone made such gorgeous and unique dolls. I really do love creating with friends. It's so much fun. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more from me, and click the bell icon and turn on all notifications so you'll know whenever I post a new video. Here are all of my socials, links will be in the description down below. I'm most active on Instagram, mainly stories. And if you really like what I do and you want to buy me a coffee or help me afford more supplies, you can find a link to my Ko-fi tip jar in the description down below, or you can click on the super thanks button right below this video. And before we head out, a few of you may know that I had issues with my laptop this past month, and I had to replace it pretty quickly. And honestly, I couldn't have done so without the help of these lovely folks on Ko-fi. They are the reason you're actually getting to see this video, and the fact that I'm not worried about my computer dying as I edit. I am so very grateful for your help, and you made sure that I could still afford food and a laptop this month, so thank you. That's all I've got for now. So until next time, bye!